Hello, this is Shani Kaish. I'm a psychologist at the Lehman College Counseling Center. This webinar is going to be about self-care. Self-care is a term you might have heard thrown around a lot, but it's a complicated topic and often harder than it sounds. So today we're going to take a look at the different aspects of self-care, what can get in the way of doing it, and how we can try to overcome some of those obstacles. You can follow along with the PowerPoint as we go along. Okay. So we're going to start with just defining self-care. Basically, what does it mean? And there are a few different aspects to it. Self-care, first of all, has to do with paying attention to what you need in your life, either now or in general in the long term, making sure those needs are met, making yourself feel good in all different kinds of ways, and aiming for a balance between the work in your life and the things that you enjoy, personal, professional, all the different aspects of your life. So many of us encounter a lot of barriers to engaging in self-care, which is the reason that we don't do it perfectly already. And there can be practical barriers. There can also be psychological barriers. Starting with the practical ones, some of the most common barriers to taking care of yourself are, for example, time. So we all have a limited number of hours in the day and a lot of things we need to do, responsibilities. So often it's hard to find the time to take care of ourselves. Money. So a lot of things that you might consider self-care cost money and you may not have that money available. Let's say you would love to go get a massage, but massages are expensive, so that might not be an option for you. Space. This could mean space, personal space in your own life. It could mean like physically having the space. Let's say a type of self-care you'd like to do is to do an exercise class from home, but you don't have a big enough room for that. So that's another limitation. Availability of yourself and also availability of the resources you're looking for. So many resources are closed right now and you don't have the option of going out and doing things that you might ordinarily enjoy doing for yourself, especially during this time of quarantine. Now, other than the physical barriers, things that keep us from engaging in self-care, there are also a lot of personal psychological reasons that sometimes hold us back from doing things for ourselves. One of the primary ones is this idea that taking care of yourself is selfish. You might be able to say, in theory, that you believe it's important to take care of yourself, but when push comes to shove, a lot of the time, we do feel like we need to prioritize other people over ourselves. For example, let's say you have a long day, you worked really hard, you're very tired, and you decide you're gonna get into bed, you're gonna watch an hour of TV, unwind, chill out, and go to sleep. And then your phone rings and your friend says, I'm going through something really hard, can we talk? Now, you might, in theory, say, it's important for me to take care of myself, but in that moment, you say, my friend needs me. It would be selfish for me to say no to them and to do the thing that I was going to do. It's disappointing, but you know what? Like, I'm going to choose them, which is not to say that there's a right or a wrong choice in that example, but a lot of the time, I think we err on the side of saying that doing the thing for us is less important than doing the thing for somebody else. Similarly, you might feel guilty that if you're doing something for yourself, you're not doing for others who may be asking for it, which kind of segues into this idea that often other people don't understand that you need to take care of yourself. People don't necessarily share your perspective or realize how you feel or how tired you may be or what you may need. And sometimes if you make a choice to do something for yourself, other people might not realize that. They might call it selfish or they might resent it. And sometimes people also make the judgment that it's wrong to focus on your own needs and it's wrong to focus on your problems or anything that you're going through because you should be grateful. Other people have it way worse. People have worse problems, as if somehow it's wrong to feel badly about something because you have certain things that are going well. Finally, emotional needs are invisible, and it's easy to forget about them or to see them as less important than other needs, which are more obvious or more external. And a lot of times we manage to convince ourselves that if we ignore our emotional needs, they're going to go away, even though it doesn't exactly work like that. So as a response to that first barrier, that idea that self-care is selfish. So this meme here is a variation on a common phrase that I think kind of sums up the response to that argument. And it's, you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. In other words, in the short term, it might seem like choosing yourself over somebody else is a selfish thing to do. But in a bigger picture, you're actually making yourself into a healthier person, a person who has more capacity to give to others. As far as the argument that you need to be grateful because other people have it worse, one response to that idea is this idea that suffering is not a contest. In other words, if suffering were a contest, there would be one winner in the world who has it worse than everybody else. And everybody else who's been through atrocities, abuses, etc., like, it doesn't count. They don't have a right to be upset because they don't have it as bad as somebody else. You know, it doesn't really make sense to put it that way. Suffering is really subjective, and pain and problems are really subjective. And it's often not helpful to say to yourself or to somebody else, you know, you shouldn't be upset about this because it could be worse. If it's upsetting to you, it's upsetting to you. If it's hard for you, it's hard for you. If you need something, then you need it, and you have a right to it, and you deserve it. This quote on the right is by Kristen Neff, who is an expert in this idea of self-compassion. And this is a phrase that she talks about saying to yourself when you're having a hard time. This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of life. Let me be kind to myself in this moment. Let me give myself the compassion I need. You don't need to be the most unfortunate person on earth to be deserving of compassion and entitled to it. Now, the flip side of this is that just like the needs can be invisible, the cost of ignoring those needs can also be invisible, but is still there. So we're all familiar with burnout, and this is something that can happen more easily if you are forgetting about your needs or ignoring your needs or putting other people's needs first. Feeling irritable, feeling depressed or down, having to fake a sort of cheerful attitude or happiness. And this is something that you could kind of sell yourself on for a while, and maybe you could sell other people on too, but you may not associate it directly with this series of choices that you're making, choosing somebody else's needs, forgetting about something that you wanted or that you felt you needed. But you know, cumulatively, that can all have an effect and can really influence your mood. It can influence the way you interact with other people. You may have a shorter temper, you may lose your temper more easily, you may just feel exhausted. And you might not say, oh, that's because I decided to pick up the phone and talk to my friend instead of going to sleep that night. But it really can be the result of that collection of that process of ignoring your own needs. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few different types of self-care that people can engage in. There are physical types, emotional types, spiritual, mental, and social. And I'll talk in more detail about each of those categories. So within the realm of physical self-care, I'm going to talk about food, exercise, sleep, and physical stimulation. So food-wise, eating healthy, having meals regularly, especially right now when time is so weird and wonky and a lot of people are just home all the time. It can be strange and not necessarily natural to keep the same schedule that you really would at other times. To eat regularly even, it can be easy to kind of neglect that. This is something to pay attention to because it might be under your radar, but an important part of maintaining yourself. Exercise. Many people don't find time or opportunity to exercise in general. Some people who do that on a regular basis enjoy going to a gym or usually work out with friends and don't have that opportunity right now. So if you want to take care of yourself in a physical way and exercise, you may need to get creative right now and try different types of things. There are a number of resources that are currently offering video workouts or virtual workouts. If anybody is interested in learning more about that, you can contact the counseling center. We have a list of resources who are offering that right now. You can work out on your own. If you feel comfortable going outside wearing a mask, you might want to take a walk or take a run or go to a park, social distancing from other people. Sometimes people like to choose an exercise buddy. Even if you're not working out in the same room, you might be able to hold yourself accountable, maybe exercise through FaceTime, or at least just create a routine that you're both going to stick to and then talk about. Sleep is another thing that can easily get thrown to the wind, especially at a time like this. Getting enough hours of sleep and also keeping a regular sleep schedule can be very important things to your health. Sometimes people find it very hard to wind down at the end of the day, especially in a day that's as amorphous as the days that we have now. It's like, what day is it? What time of day is it? I'm not really sure. I've been in this room for the last week. So some people find it helpful to create a bedtime routine, something that you do before bed that will help you wind down at the end of the day and relax and help yourself get to sleep at your scheduled time. For some people, that might mean having some tea, it might mean listening to music, it might mean shutting down your phone or your computer at a certain time and deciding you're not going to go on social media after that time, or not going to be stimulated with something that really wakes you up and activates you after a certain hour. Creating a routine like that for yourself can help in getting yourself into the habit of sleeping regularly. Physical stimulation is something that people don't always talk about directly, and this might mean something you're doing with a partner, it might mean something you're doing on your own, but it's easy to neglect this, even at the best of times, but certainly now, and it's also something to consider in terms of taking care of yourself on a physical level. Now moving on to the area of emotional self-care. So there are a few different categories. I'll go through them one at a time. So self-validation. Validation means saying that the feelings that you have are valid, they make sense, you have a right to feel them. This doesn't mean necessarily getting lost in your feelings, drowning in your feelings, but it means giving the feelings some breathing room and letting them be there. Saying to yourself things like, this is hard. Yeah, that's frustrating. Okay, so I'm angry. It doesn't have to be the end of the world because you feel bad about something. It's a gift, easy, well, maybe not easy, but a brief and something you can make a habit of is making these supportive statements to yourself in your head. Like this quote says, talk to yourself like you would talk to someone you love. So encouraging self-talk, similarly, in terms of things that you want to do, things that you are wondering whether you can do. You know, giving yourself a boost, being your own cheerleader. You can do this. You're a rock star. You're doing the best you can. A lot of times we really get into the habit of making negative statements to ourselves, like, I'm an idiot. I can't do this. This isn't going to work. Things are just getting worse. I'm not doing good enough. And you know, it's really hard to be perfect anytime, especially under these really weird and challenging circumstances, but you can often find something to say to yourself that you can believe is true, like, I'm really trying, for example. You know, try to make it something that you will believe, but something positive that you can believe about yourself. Negative feelings are something that are very hard for us, and a lot of us tend to react to negative feelings by trying to get rid of them. We do this with other people too, you know, like saying to somebody, don't be sad, don't cry, look on the bright side. But negative feelings really need some space. They need to be there. Again, it doesn't mean that you necessarily dwell on them or that that's all you feel, but sometimes letting some of those feelings be allows you to free yourself up to feel other things too. If you try to suppress those feelings, if you just try to lock them out, if you try to block them out, then you're subjecting yourself to some of those like indirect side effects that we talked about before. Worsening your mood, worsening your interactions with other people, shutting you down, kind of. And rather than shut yourself down, it's important to allow yourself to feel however it is you feel, which may change from day to day or even moment to moment. Sadness, loneliness, anger, jealousy, resentment, frustration, we have a really hard time feeling these things. A lot of times we feel guilty for feeling some of these ways. But feeling a certain way doesn't mean you're going to act on that feeling necessarily. It doesn't mean you're going to do anything harmful. It just means that that's the feeling you have right now. At the same time, you don't necessarily want to be in those bad feelings 24/7 to the extent that they interfere with your life and that they hold you back from other things. So another part of taking care of yourself emotionally is learning how to disengage from negative feelings, seeing them without having to chase after them. One method of building this skill is mindfulness meditation, which has to do with practicing on a regular basis the process of noticing your thoughts and feelings, noticing your experience in the present moment, without judging it, without having to make it something else, and without getting attached to it. One example of a really great resource for this is the 10-Minute Mind, which is a program that's free for CUNY students and staff. And if you sign up for this, they will send you a 10-minute mindfulness meditation every day by email. So if you're interested, if you don't already have this resource, you can contact the counseling center and we can send you the flyer for that so you can sign up. A lot of it is about being able to shift your attention, gaining more mastery over what you're paying attention to. There could be bad feelings, there could be good feelings, there could be neutral feelings, there could be annoyed feelings. You can build the skill of deciding what you want to pay attention to, what you want to spend your time and energy on. And you can have certain feelings or thoughts be there without having to hang out with them the whole time. Another technique for shifting those feelings or from diverting your attention can be tuning into your physical experience. That might mean just paying attention to your 5 senses. What do I see right now? What am I touching right now? What do I smell? What do I hear? And pausing and just paying attention to each of those things bring you back into this moment, out of your head. Another thing could be intense physical activity, running in place for 2 minutes, or doing jumping jacks, or going for a jog, or dancing. That can also help kind of shake up your body, clear your head. Humor is another nice tool. Put in a stupid YouTube video or some funny show that you like, or anything that will make you laugh and just sort of like shake loose some of those feelings if you feel like you're stuck in them. And the last aspect of emotional self-care is having fun. This is something that can often be pushed to the back burner and you kind of say, well, I'll do it when I get around to it. Or you end up doing it when it just happens to come up and then you get distracted from something else that you needed to do. Whereas if you carve out the time for yourself to actually do things that you enjoy, watching TV or movies, spending time with friends, whether it's virtually or in person, whenever possible and healthy, listening to music, playing games, doing hobbies, projects, things that you like, things that are just fun for you and don't require a lot of energy or thought or brain power, just being able to relax and do something nice. Those are really valuable. Spiritual self-care might mean something very different depending on who you are, what your spiritual experience or identity is. Maybe you identify as a religious person, maybe you have spiritual practices that you engage in. Whatever that does mean to you, if you do identify with some kind of spirituality, it can be a really powerful type of self-care, whether that means praying, being part of a spiritual community online at this point, meditating, doing yoga, any kind of rituals or spiritual practices that you have personally or as part of your community, listening to music, reading or watching inspiring videos. A lot of people find strength and nourishment from some of these activities. Mental self-care means stimulating your mind, doing things that make your brain kind of wake up, but in an enjoyable kind of way, not a draining kind of way. So some of these might be doing challenging, satisfying activities. Again, this is not something that's supposed to be a task or something that you dread. It might be something that you have to kind of like muster up a little bit of motivation to get started with, but something that if you do it is going to feel satisfying to you, give you some kind of sense of accomplishment, some kind of challenge to your mind. This might be a puzzle, a brain teaser, doing some kind of interesting project or assignment, learning something new like studying a new language or an instrument or a hobby, taking up some new kind of skill, something that you might walk away from saying, oh, I just got something done. That was nice. Accomplishing goals would mean anything that you have to do and maybe don't always make time for. To a certain extent, getting those things done is a means of self-care. Again, if you walk away with a sense of accomplishment, getting assignments done, taking care of things at home, rewarding yourself. A lot of times we feel like, well, I'm supposed to be doing this, so why should I deserve a reward for it? But rewarding yourself is just a way of reinforcing your behavior and getting yourself to do it more in the future. So a self-reward might mean something nice you like to eat that you wouldn't have had otherwise, maybe giving yourself a treat, maybe taking a hot bath, whatever it is that is going to make you feel like you're patting yourself on the back for doing something that you needed to do and getting it done. Time management is a big one that a lot of us are struggling with right now, especially when we're home a lot during the day. And it can even be hard to keep track of what day it is, let alone what time of the day it is. And a lot of times things can really fall by the wayside. And it's very, very important when you have a lot of unstructured time to create some kind of structure for yourself to help yourself get motivated, to help yourself get things done. This picture on the right is an example of a way that you could plan your day. This is an interesting document that we can send you as a file if you'd like from the counseling center. It comes with an explanation sheet that has a lot of different ideas for self-care, for things to factor into your routine. It includes a lot of things that we've talked about today. Whether you do it this way, whether you do it a different way, sticking to a schedule and pushing yourself a little bit to do that can really make you feel better in the long run. And you might start with a really ambitious schedule and then figure out that that's not working for you or it's not realistic, and then play with it, tweak it, adjust it, find something that is going to work for you and that's realistic. Overcoming resistance. A lot of the time when we set goals for ourselves, the hardest part is getting started. Probably many of you can relate to this. I certainly can. You have this really great idea in theory, and then you get to that day or that hour and you're like, maybe later, or I don't know, like I'm just not feeling it. And there's a really interesting technique that's called the 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule has been written about by different people. David Allen wrote about it in terms of like organizing activities. And there's sort of these different aspects to it. But if you look at the middle section, which was formulated by James Clear, if something is going to take you more than 2 minutes, especially if you're trying to start a new habit, like getting an assignment done, like getting housework done, whatever it is that you find you've been meaning to start and you just aren't starting, tell yourself you're going to do 2 minutes of it. And if you want to quit after 2 minutes, you can walk away guilt-free. You've done your piece for the day. A lot of the time, once you get started on a task, it's much easier to keep going. And once you're in it, you don't need to leave. You can just keep going. Again, you don't have to keep going. A lot of people say, well, I'll never get this thing done in 2 minutes a day, so what's the point? The point is that if you're not getting it done now, you're not going to be any worse off, but you're putting yourself in a better position to get started. So the 2-minute rule can apply if there's something that you find you've been pushing off or something on your schedule that's not getting done. Tell yourself, my goal for today is to do 2 minutes of this activity. Maybe more, doesn't have to be. And see how that works for you. The other ends of the 2-minute rule are, this has to do with like if you're structuring your plans and if something's going to take less than 2 minutes, do right away. The right side has to do with distractions. If you have the impulse to walk away from what you're doing, wait for 2 minutes before you do it. And that can sometimes help you like surf that urge to leave, to get distracted, to do something impulsive that's going to take you away from what you need. And sort of similar to the 2-minute rule of starting something, a 2-minute rule of stopping something. So this is a handy dandy little technique to try in different situations. Saying no can be a vital part of self-care. This has to do with setting boundaries, setting limits. It's complicated, it's hard, and for every person it looks different because everybody has different responsibilities and different things that you have to do. For each of us, there are certain things that we don't have the option of saying no to, but there's also things that we do have the option of saying no to and maybe feel pressured to say yes. So saying no is about recognizing your limits, evaluating what's immediately necessary and what is not immediately necessary. Maybe it would be nice to do this thing, but maybe you don't have the energy, or maybe you're not in the mood, or maybe you're just so tired and you feel like you need something different. Creating personal time as much as you can and protecting that personal time. So kind of taking that example of somebody who's tired and trying to go to bed and saying, I'm going to watch this movie for an hour and then I'm going to go to sleep. If somebody tries to change that plan, unless something that seems really crucial, really vital, saying to yourself, like, I'm going to keep this plan. Actually, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. And maybe it involves explaining to the other person why you can't do it, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just like, I'm so sorry, I can't right now. A lot of times we don't feel entitled to do that, but it's a really important part of self-care, setting firm limits as much as you can. And finally, self-care on a social level. So connecting with other people is really important and something that's a lot harder to do right now when we're physically separate from other people. So ways to connect through people might be calling them, texting them, reaching out either in an involved kind of way, like trying to have a real conversation, or just sending a brief like, hey, thinking about you, or how are you doing? People schedule virtual hangouts with each other. They use apps like House Party, other things, Zoom, ways that people can get together in groups if they can't get together in person. People play games or apps together. There are games that are available online, or an app that, you know, if you enjoy the same game as your friend, you can like friend each other on the app and then play together. So, you know, like kind of profound ways of connecting with people, or superficial, just like light ways of connecting with people. You know, they each have their value and they're each important. If you're looking to talk to people about something that you're struggling with, there are also support groups online that you can get in touch with. You know, maybe access people who are going through something similar and can relate. If you go to NAMI.org, this website, it has a lot of interesting ideas and groups that are available for people to meet each other online and talk about various things that are related to mental health. And another type of social self-care is being able to tell people what you need and accept their help. For some people, this is easier than others. Some people more naturally express their needs. Some people tend to take a more independent stance and have a harder time expressing their needs or asking other people for help. This might mean just telling somebody how you feel, you know, reaching out, saying like, I'm having a really rough day, or could I talk to you? It could also mean being really explicit about what you want from that person. A lot of times we reach out to a friend, or a friend notices that we're struggling and they want to help, but maybe their way of helping is not the way that we want. You know, maybe you're upset about something and that person immediately jumps in trying to solve the problem. All you want is to vent. Or maybe, you know, the person's really sympathetic, but you're looking for solutions. Be as specific as you can. Tell them, I want advice, or tell them, can I just vent to you right now? And you have a better chance of getting what you're looking for from support from that person. Obviously, choosing people who you think are going to be supportive in the way that you need. And, you know, also on a practical level, asking for help with practical things so that you can create time for yourself. You know, sometimes if you are responsible for a lot of things, you may kind of, you know, just try to control everything at once and have a harder time delegating. Whereas, you know, if you share the load with somebody and say, would you please take care of this? You know, could you help me with that? You might free up some time and energy for yourself. So in conclusion, this is a quote from Audre Lorde, who said, "I've come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of survival." I would say that whether it's an act of physical survival or an act of emotional survival, our own wellness depends very much on caring for ourselves. And figuring out what that means for yourself is a process of exploration and discovery. And I encourage you all to continue that process for yourselves. Think about ways that you can care for yourselves. Figure out what you need that you might not have right now and go get it, because you deserve it. You need it. You can only be a better friend, family member, teacher, student, everything else in your life if you are more well and healthy yourself. So good luck to everybody with everything stressful that you're doing, and I hope that everyone can find sources of strength and renewal for yourselves and support, and that we can get through this time and tackle one challenge at a time. Take care.